Have you ever wondered why the man you love deeply seems to pull away the more affection you show him, as if the more love you give, the farther he drifts? It's not your fault. This is not about doing too much or too little. It's about an ancient principle hidden deep in the male psyche, what Carl Jung called the primordial wound, a blind spot in the soul of men. And when touched, not manipulated, but gently awakened, it can stir something sacred inside him, a longing to become worthy of true love. Let me tell you the story of Eliza, a successful American woman, deeply loving and fiercely loyal. She gave everything to her partner. She was available, supportive, present. And strangely, the more she gave, the colder he became. Until one day Eliza stopped trying. She returned to herself. She focused inward in her soul's journey. No games, no tactics. She simply became deeper, quieter, mysterious. And then something changed. The man began to see her, not just with his eyes, but with his heart. He leaned in. He pursued. He longed. Why? Carl Jung once said, "A man is not conquered by affection, but by an image within himself of the woman who awakens his unrealized potential." This isn't a strategy. This is the mysticism of love, a journey. How do you become the mirror of the soul? A woman in whom he not only sees you, but also the great man he could become. How do you awaken in him a primordial yearning to touch you, not just as a person, but as a symbol? In this video, I will reveal 3 ancient secrets, the kind once embodied by women like Cleopatra, Helen of Troy, even Frida Kahlo. Women who didn't learn this from books but lived it instinctively. These truths are now affirmed by both Jungian depth psychology and modern neuroscience on the male brain. These secrets are not about helping you win a man. They are about helping you enter a more sacred space where love becomes a tool for mutual awakening. So, are you ready to step into the labyrinth of the male psyche? There's an unspoken truth: few dare to touch the man you love, who seems strong, independent, and confident, may in fact carry within him an ancient wound, a silent ache buried deep in the unconscious. Carl Jung called it the primordial wound. It is the feeling of never being good enough, never truly seen, never honored as a man in his full essence. And the paradox is, when this wound is touched, not by control, but by conscious love, it can awaken the deepest parts of him, the warrior, the protector, the devoted lover. If you've ever watched Good Will Hunting, you'll remember the moment when Robin Williams, playing the therapist, repeats gently to Will, "It's not your fault," over and over, not to comfort, but to pierce through the walls Will built to hide his pain. That's when Will breaks down, not from weakness, but because for the first time he feels truly seen, not for his intelligence or strength, but for who he really is inside. So the question is, can a woman create such a moment of awakening? The answer is yes, if she understands the language of the wound. Every man lives with a nameless fear. You see him successful, confident, maybe even the life of the party, but deep down he carries the fear: I am not enough to be truly loved. If she sees the real me, she will leave. Jung called this hidden part the shadow, the dark side men are trained by society to conceal. As a boy, he was taught, don't cry, be strong, but no one ever taught him how to process pain, so he buried it in his subconscious and learned to survive behind masked personas grafted to win approval, not to reveal truth. Can you sense this in the man you love? Touch the wound, awaken the soul of the warrior. Jung once wrote, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." When a woman with an awakened heart and deep presence sees his wound without judgment, she becomes a mirror to his soul, an embodiment of his anima. Think of Arwen in The Lord of the Rings. She never drew a sword, but her unwavering belief in Aragorn called him into his kingship. She saw not only who he was, but who he could become. You can do the same, but not by overgiving, not by sacrificing yourself to stay available. You do it by standing in your own light and seeing him deeper than he sees himself. Love is a sacred ritual of healing. True love is not dependency, it is a sacred transformation. A space where two people help each other return to their truest selves. When you connect with a man from a grounded place, not pleading, not controlling, but with the calm, radiant presence of awakened femininity, you're not fixing him. You're helping him come home to himself. This is why Jung said the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. Tell your story. Don't try to rescue him. You don't need to be his healer. Share your truth without decoration, without performance. When you say, I used to fear I wasn't enough, but I'm learning to love even the wounded parts of me, you open a safe space for him. One of my clients, Hannah, once said this to her commitment-avoidant boyfriend. He went silent for a long moment. Then for the first time in their 3-year relationship, he whispered, I always thought you'd leave if you knew how imperfect I really am. That night they began to truly love each other, for real for the first time. Remember, you're not alone. There are countless women just like you walking this path not to control men, but to love more wisely. If you've ever felt lost in love, or like you were giving too much without being met, leave a comment. Let this be a sacred space where awakened women gather not just to heal, but to awaken a new generation of men. In the next section, we'll dive into the first ancient secret on this journey, the soul mirror. This is where you'll learn how to become the reflection in which a man sees not just who he is now, but the extraordinary man he could become. And that's when he begins to love you, not because you cater to him, but because you make him want to become the man worthy of you. Carl Jung described the anima, the feminine archetype within the male unconscious, as a force both sacred and dangerous. When a man encounters a woman onto whom he unconsciously projects this anima, she becomes an almost mythical figure, not merely a lover, but the living reflection of his very soul. A man doesn't fall in love with you simply because you are kind to him. He loves you when you become the image of his becoming, the man he is not yet but deeply longs to be. When you mirror that image, subtly through your gaze, your words, your belief, you awaken one of the deepest drives in a man's psyche, the urge to prove his worth. We see this clearly in A Star is Born. Lady Gaga isn't just Jackson's, Bradley Cooper's lover. She's the one who sees his gift, who believes in him, even when he's drowning in self-doubt. The story ends in tragedy, yes, but for a time her belief resurrects him. Yet if a woman doesn't understand the mechanism of anima projection, she can become its victim. The man falls under her spell, then suddenly grows cold and vanishes. Why? Because she ceases to be the projection. She becomes real, and his shadow cannot bear that truth. Have you ever been ghosted after a beautiful, intense beginning? Perhaps he projected an ideal image onto you, and when he saw that you too get angry, sad, or disappointed, he didn't know how to integrate that reality. So instead of growing, he ran. To embody the anima maturely, you must avoid two traps. One, becoming his savior, constantly trying to heal or fix him. This drains your energy and makes him feel controlled. Two, trying to be perfect to preserve the image he has of you. This disconnects you from your authentic self. Instead, be a mirror of depth. See his potential, but don't take responsibility for making it real. Say something like, I see that you're capable of much more, but I respect your timing and your choices. This creates challenge without pressure, freedom with presence. I've worked with hundreds of brilliant, big-hearted women who gave everything and still got left behind. Not because they weren't enough, but because they didn't understand the deeper psychology within men. They failed to create the tension between potential and reality, which is essential to activate the warrior archetype. Instead, they became the nurturing mother or the emotional caretaker, and unfortunately, the male brain isn't wired to desire what feels overly safe and predictable. If you don't awaken the deeper layers of him, he will revert to old patterns, chasing novelty, seeking easier connections, avoiding discomfort, but soon he'll feel empty again because no one truly sees him, and the cycle begins anew. Do you want to be the one who breaks that cycle not by pleasing him, but by becoming a symbol of awakening in his life? Leave a comment if you found yourself in these patterns, loving with your whole heart only to feel diminished or unseen. You're not alone. Thousands of women are walking this path of awakening just like you. And when we share our stories, we help each other heal. In the next section, it'll reveal the second secret, the paradox of presence. This is the art of being fully there, yet keeping something sacred for yourself, so that the man stays in a state of healthy longing. Because the male psyche, as you'll discover, doesn't fall in love with certainty. It falls in love with mystery. In a man's psyche, presence is not merely about being physically available. His deepest desire is not to be protected, but to be challenged, called forth, and provoked to show up fully. Jung once wrote, "The psyche is a drama between the persona and the shadow." When you are present in a way that makes him unable to predict you, you're not just standing in front of him, you're activating a hidden journey within. Why does the male brain crave uncertainty? According to neuroscience, unpredictability stimulates dopamine anticipation, which activates the brain's reward system more intensely than certainty does. This explains the addictive nature of gambling or games of chance. When you are always emotionally available, constantly present, his brain registers you as already attained. No pursuit, no fire. Dopamine drops. A man's inner psychology is shaped by two opposing forces: sanctuary, a place of safe refuge, and quest, a journey of conquest. When a woman offers only sanctuary, predictability, softness, and no challenge, the quest fails. But when you offer both sanctuary and mystery, he experiences a full spectrum of emotion and he stays. How to embody a presence that is both alive and mysterious. Keep parts of your inner world private. When he asks, "How was your day?" you might say, "There was a quiet stillness in me today." He'll share more, maybe over a glass of wine in silence, when we can both feel it. You're not withholding, you're inviting. You spark curiosity and depth. Don't respond instantly. In a world flooded with notifications, delay is not a game at self-respect. And nothing draws a man deeper than a woman who respects her own rhythm. His unconscious reads that, as she honors herself, she will honor me. Occasionally disappear gently, like Miranda in Sex and the City, who vanished for a solo trip without explanation. When she returned, the relationship recalibrated, not as a tactic, but as a natural reset. Space creates longing. The deeper psychology, the unconscious and inner belief systems. Every time you preserve a piece of mystery, you awaken his unconscious search for what's missing. He doesn't just like you, he's drawn to discover you. And in that process, he gets to prove himself to himself and to the world. There's an invisible belief wired into many men: I need to be challenged. I can't conquer what comes too easily. If you learn to speak to this belief, not with manipulation, but with intentional stillness, you're speaking directly to his deepest instinct. The cost of ignoring this paradox. If your presence is constant and predictable, he may begin to see you like a room flooded with daylight, nothing left to explore. No shadows, no mystery, no spark. Eventually he leaves, not because he's cruel, but because he no longer feels the urge to move. Take Lisa, one of my clients. She'd been with her boyfriend for 2.5 years, sharing everything openly. Then one day he told her, "I don't know where I am in you anymore." And he disappeared. No fights, no tension, just silence. Because he no longer felt the energy of pursuit. And without pursuit, his masculine psyche began to dissolve into numbness. How to keep him through balanced opposites. Be intentional with your availability, not absent, but not always on. Create occasional off moments where you don't respond instantly, don't overshare. Let the space in him breathe. Offer moments of deep surprise. Send him a quote from a book you love or an abstract image that reflects your inner world. Make him think, connect, puzzle, and explore. Maintain soft boundaries. Be approachable, but not constantly open. Let him knock on the door of your soul. Have you ever tried to be fully present only to feel empty in return? Share in the comments. Not to blame yourself, but to acknowledge that you too are learning the art of renewal. Have you ever made someone disappear by being too fully there? In the next section, we'll explore the third ancient, secret confrontation with the shadow. You'll learn how to touch the deepest wounds inside a man, not to manipulate, but to heal and bond at the soul level. Because when you know how to hold darkness, you don't just keep him close, you help him keep himself. Once you become the soul mirror and awaken the mystique of your presence, the deepest step awaits confronting the darkness within him. At this point, you are no longer just a lover, you become a spiritual guide, inviting him to meet himself again, his fears, flaws, and forgotten parts. Jung called this the confrontation with the shadow, the most powerful act of intimacy. The shadow, the part of the psyche we all repress, holds what we deny: fear, self-doubt, shame, aggression. For men, it often appears as the fear of not being enough, shame around failure or rejection, buried rage and unexpressed anger. When the shadow remains buried in the unconscious, he may seem calm, but it's a false peace. Beneath it lies a silent loop of unresolved pain. A powerful archetype for this stage is the priestess, the soul keeper who walks into darkness not to judge but to hold the sacred fire of healing. Mariana embodied this archetype. She wasn't just wise, she saw through illusions. When you hold his hand, look into his eyes and say, "You have the right to be angry, to feel disappointed, to feel weak. I'm still here." You are inviting him to show up, not just in light, but in wholeness. Teresa is another example, the healer warrior, strong and tender. When she told her emotionally unavailable partner, "You once said you feared not being enough, and maybe that's true, but I see you as enough, even in your vulnerability." That was an invitation, a permission to be real, to be accepted not for strength, but for authenticity. Why does this work psychologically? It triggers oxytocin. When someone touches your shadow with conscious compassion, your brain releases oxytocin, the deepest bonding hormone. He doesn't just feel more in love, he feels safe, understood. It rewrites unconscious schemas many men were conditioned to believe: if I cry, I'm weak. If I reveal sadness, I'll be shamed. But you're rewriting that script. You're saying you don't have to hide anymore. It separates the man from the mistake. When you say you may falter, but I'm still here, you're making a crucial distinction. His value is not reduced to his behavior. That's something every soul longs for. What happens if you can't do this? If you only love him at the surface, cheering him on or trying to teach him, you reinforce the shadow instead of helping him face it. He may feel briefly praised but not truly seen. And if he dares to open up in your arms only to find performance instead of presence, he will shut down and disappear. Not out of pride, but to protect his deepest wound. The process of facing the shadow together. You go first. Share 1 or 2 sentences about your own wound. Example: I used to fear I wasn't lovable after failure, but now I'm learning to live with that part of me. This opens the door for him. He shares. You stay silent. Don't rush to fix it. Your stillness becomes his safe container. You reflect back with sincere acknowledgement, no judgment, no advice. Just thank you for sharing. I see strength in your honesty. That's the affirmation he's never received. Extend the warm space, don't rush to heal. Sometimes healing doesn't need solutions, just the knowing. There's a place I can return to exactly as I am. Have you ever shared pain with a man and been surprised by what came back? Or did you try and meet only silence? Leave a comment. This is a discreet, supportive space where your story may be the medicine someone else needs. In the final part, we'll bring it all together. How to turn the 3 sacred secrets, the soul mirror, the paradox of presence, and the shadow confrontation into a conscious love journey. Not just to keep him close, but to help him hold himself and help you both rise into your truest selves. There is one concept Carl Jung held as the center of all human spiritual life: individuation. Not success, not love, not status, but the process of becoming whole, living beyond the false self or unhealed wounds, daring to live from the deep truth of who we are. What many don't realize is this: love, especially deep conscious relationships, is one of the most powerful gateways to this path. Individuation, as Jung described, is the sacred inner journey, where the ego slowly learns to recognize, integrate, and respect the contents of the unconscious, including the shadow, our denied parts, the anima, animus, our inner feminine, masculine, the persona, our social mask, the self, our higher wholeness. This is not a journey to perfection. It's a journey to authenticity, to fullness, to the moment when you can finally say, I am not only light, I am also shadow, and I no longer deny that. When a man is loved in this way, when you reflect back to him, the shadow he's never owned, the pain he's never voiced, the greatness he's never claimed, he doesn't just fall in love, he begins to return to himself. At this level, love is no longer dependency, it becomes a sacred mirror of the self. As Jung wrote, true love is not the merging of two halves, but the meeting of two already whole souls. Take Katerina, for example, a successful woman who once shrank herself not to injure the pride of the man she loved. But when she began to live truthfully, no longer apologizing for her success, no longer dimming her light to avoid jealousy, no longer doing less to be easier to love, she became a symbol of the self in his life. Not the good girlfriend, but the image of awakening. You stop asking, how do I make him love me? And start asking, am I living in alignment with who I truly am? And strangely, beautifully, when you live from truth, real love appears. Or rather, love no longer needs to be chased. It arrives. This is Jung's paradox. Only when we no longer seek to control others do we gain the deepest influence over them. A woman who avoids this journey may rely emotionally on external validation, lose herself in caretaking roles, dim her light to fit an image of what men want. And the worst part, she no longer sees herself in the mirror because every decision is built around, how do I make sure I won't be left? How do you walk the path of individuation? Look at your shadow without blame, without denial. Sit with your fears, fear of abandonment, fear of not being enough, let them speak. Embrace your inner masculine and feminine. You can be strong and soft. Dialogue with the self through meditation, journaling, dreams, reflection. Don't try to fix him, walk beside him. Every time you choose truth, you give him permission to do the same. If you are on this journey of becoming your truest self, comment below, am not perfect, but am real. Share it with this community. You never know, your story might be the key that helps another woman step out of her darkness. You've walked through every stage, the soul mirror, the paradox of presence, the confrontation with the shadow, and now individuation. In the final conclusion, we'll step back and see the full picture. How can love become a path to awakening? How can you become not just attractive, but the force that stirs a man's soul? Don't miss it. Love, if it's merely a fleeting enchantment, will fade like a fire without wood. But if love is a journey of awakening, where two souls dare to touch the deepest, darkest parts of each other, it becomes sacred. Not because it's always peaceful, but because it's always real. You don't need to become some perfect muse. You don't need to shrink, quiet yourself, or do less to be loved. You simply need the courage to live as a symbol, a woman who dares to look into her own mirror and who dares to become the soul mirror for the man beside her. Take a moment now. Ask yourself, have I ever loved in this way? Am I helping the man I love become his whole self, or just a projection of societal expectations? Am I willing to enter my own shadow so I can hold his hand when he's lost in his? Carl Jung once wrote, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Love does not heal you, but it can open the door if you are brave enough to walk through it. Have you ever touched the shadow inside a man? What happened next? Share your story in the comments, because maybe, just maybe, your story is the torch that helps another woman find her way through the dark. If this video touched your heart, hit like so YouTube knows you want more content that speaks to your soul. Subscribe to the channel. Future videos won't just help you understand men, they'll help you understand yourself. And if you know a friend or sister who's lost in love, send her this video. Sometimes just one piece of truth can unlock an entire life. And one last thing, something truly important. When you learn to awaken the soul of a man, you awaken your own. And perhaps you'll come to see the greatest love isn't the one that makes someone choose you. It's the one that helps you choose yourself fully every single day.